Hey YouTube, it's Annabelle. So this is going to be my tantrum tips video, and this is going to be how we do things and what works best for us. I've done lots of research on behavior and strategies to take care of behaviors, and so these are the main things that I have learned and what I've been practicing, implementing, whatever you want to call it, with our daughter. My daughter is 2.5, and we have been implementing some type of discipline with her since she was about 1. When she was about 1, she started to do things, and she was looking if we were looking at her. So she was aware that she was doing something that mommy and daddy didn't want her to do, and she was still doing it anyways. So we did start doing timeouts with my daughter again right around the time that she was 1, and the timeout process worked for us, and it is still working for us, but we have had some new stuff pop up in the last year. Now, her behavior went from just doing little things to full-blown tantrums if she did not get what she wanted. And that all started about right after she was about 18 months old is when she had her first actual tantrum. And I was like, oh my gosh, the terrible twos already. And so it was kind of a trial and error process for us. We tried some things that didn't work. We tried ignoring her, or we tried trying to deal with the situation. And so this is kind of what we have found that has worked best. Okay, so the number one thing is to try to stop a tantrum before it even happens. If you know you're going into a situation where you know some things cause frustration or your child to get upset, try to talk about those things beforehand. So let them know what they are to expect from these situations, and then let them know what your expectations of them and their behavior are. So let your expectations be known is the very first thing. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit before I move on to my next ones. But we expect different things from my daughter at home than we do, say, in public. So we have different indoor expectations of her, and we have different outdoor expectations of her. Obviously, she can do much more yelling, screaming, horseplay, roughhousing kind of stuff outside than she can inside. We do let her run in the house in the winter months and things like that, because you just can't get outside and get that activity. But in the summertime, we let her do her running and playing and ball throwing and everything outside. So those are kind of where our expectations are as for indoors, outdoors. And then for at home, our expectations of her are different than they are out in public. And so we have to kind of practice those things, and we let her know what's going to happen, what we expect of her on outings, if we're going to the park, or if we're going to the grocery store, if we're having a play date, her social behavior. We let her know what we expect of her before we go into that situation. So just an example of how I let my expectations be known is that we had some issues with the grocery store. So while we are getting ready to go to the grocery store, and while we are on our drive to the grocery store, I start talking about my expectations of her and what she can expect. So I talk about what we're going to go get when we go to the store, and I explain what we are not going to get. She will see other kids getting candy and chips and things like that, and she wants those things too. And so we just go over again that those are our sometimes things. We will buy those if we're going over to a friend's house. If we're having people over, we'll buy chips and different things like that. And that we don't get candy when we go to the store. Candy is saved for Halloween and Valentine's Day and Easter and things like that. So we just kind of let those expectations be known to her before we get there. So pinpointing the things that cause tantrums and talking about those situations before they happen is key. Now, again, I'm going to use our grocery store as an example. With the grocery store that we have has one cart that is a kid's cart. It has a little truck on the front of it that toddlers and kids can get into, and then they can drive the cart around the store. They only have one, and so if it is not there, that was causing my daughter to become upset. So we talk about, well, if somebody else is using the cart, it's their turn for the cart. But if the cart's there, then we get to use it. It's our turn to use the cart. So we kind of talk about that. So then that completely eliminates the tantrum. She knows that it might be there, and she knows that it also might not be there. And we had 2 instances where it wasn't there, that she had a fit. Didn't want to use the other cart, wanted to go home, like it was crazy. So we talk about that on the way there. You know, it might not be there, or it might be there and we can use it. Another thing that we talk about is like staying in the cart, not running around, watching out for other people, just kind of those behavior things. Or things that might cause a behavior or need her to be redirected and stuff. So she is aware of the situation before we even get there. Just another example is our city pool has breaks where they have to get out of the pool for 10 minutes, and then all the lifeguards get their break, and then when their lifeguards come back and they blow the whistles, then everybody can get back in. Well, we were having some like tantrum stuff at the beginning of this summer where she didn't want to get out of the pool. She still was trying to slip herself into the pool when it was still break, and it was getting used to that situation, that it's different than it is at home. At home, we don't have breaks where we have to get out of the pool. Everybody has to get out and like wait to get back in. Like we play in our pool, and when we're done, we get out. So that kind of stuff is like different for her. Well, at home in the pool, like I can be in there, I can dip my toes in it, I can do whatever I want. And at the city pool, I can't. I have to get out for 10 minutes. So talking about that stuff before we get there will eliminate a lot of like the tantrum kind of stuff. When we go over to friend's house, be like, okay, if they say do not touch something of theirs, you do not touch it. And when we first get to a friend's house, if they don't have kids and their house isn't like childproof, or there's something shiny on the table, it's like, okay, we don't touch that, or we need to ask before we touch that, or something like that, so then they don't get in trouble. And I have found that every place I go, I start looking for a timeout spot, whether we're at a friend's house with kids or without kids, or if we're at home, or if we're at like the park or something and she just needs a timeout. I find a kind of a quieter place to put her. Being in front of people does not work. She has to be by herself. So that is one thing that I look for, that I found that I do when we go someplace, is find a place where she would be by herself, that we could be like, okay, we're going to sit here for 2 minutes and take a break. Okay, so letting your expectations be known. I know those were kind of long examples, but that is one thing that has worked awesome to avoid tantrums even in the first place, is let your expectations be known. And there might be different expectations depending on where you're at, like the pool situation, our pool at home and the city pool. Okay, so another thing is we remind our daughter to use her words. Now, she was starting to get upset and starting to do this kind of stuff when she was upset, and just starting to be like, ah! And she wasn't using her words. And so I started off by telling her, I don't know what this means. I don't know what ah means. And I was like, you have to tell me. You have to use your words. And this is our sign for words. So that way she knows what I mean if I'm across the room, so I don't have to yell or anything, or if we're someplace else and she starts going, then I just do this, and she knows that she needs to use her words. So, and we say that, we say, use your words. We try to talk about it, talk about what she wants, how she's feeling. And that's my third point. So let your expectations be known. Use your words, or you use words. If your child can't talk, try to say the words of how they are feeling. Like, you look like you're mad. You look like you're sad. You look like you're frustrated or upset or angry. When my daughter is just like bummed about something, I try to use the word sad. And when she's like starting to get upset, I use the word mad. If she is really mad, I say angry. That way she kind of can put a word to kind of how she's feeling. And then I do the same when she's not in a bad mood or like sad or mad. If she's happy, I'm like, wow, you look really happy, or you look really excited. So it's also kind of like teaching emotions and putting a word to their emotions. And I also have her say it. Like if I think she's sad, then I say, you're sad. Can you say sad? And then she'll say it to me. So she kind of starts connecting the word to her feeling. And that rolls me right into number 3, which is feelings. Talk about your child's feelings. Like, that made you mad because, and then offer a explanation. Like, when the truck cart is like being used at the grocery store and it's not there, you are mad because you can't ride in that cart today while we do our grocery shopping. And usually she's like, yeah, I want that cart. And it's like, okay, well, we have to use one of the yellow carts. And she's like, okay. And so just putting words to the feelings and identifying feelings just has helped out awesome. Another thing with dealing tantrums, you cannot yell. I have found that when I'm getting myself, like I'm getting upset, I tend to raise my voice, and I hate doing that. I always catch myself doing it, and I'm like, okay, we need to bring it down. Even if I have to take a mommy timeout, like, and that's another thing with tantrums, if you're upset and you need a timeout, like just becoming angry and like yelling and screaming and throwing stuff teaches your child that when you're frustrated or upset, that they can do that too. There was one time that I was like angry about something, and I like put my hand down on the counter, and I was like, man. And it was the next day, like it wasn't even the same day. My daughter like did that, and she was like, man, and she hit the table, and I was like, oh my gosh, I so did that yesterday. So like you're modeling what you want your child to do, and it's very hard when you're frustrated. I found that if my son is upset, he went through a couple weeks where we were trying to figure him out and figure out his fussy times and things, where I was a little bit kind of like anxious and kind of frustrated about it. And if my daughter would do something, I'd kind of snap at her. And I found that that just escalated the situation and just made it worse. So if you say like no yelling, you have to stay calm and talk to your child and like get down on their level, and like not like in their face, but down on the same level so you can talk to them face to face and talk about like the feelings of what's going to happen, offer like alternatives to the situation, different things to do, or redirect them away from the activity. But also if you like try to parent from another room or the couch, it doesn't work. I have done both. When I was nursing my son during the day, I would be sitting on the couch, and my son would be eating, and my daughter would do something, and like the parenting like communication with her, she didn't think that I was serious, and she's like, oh well, mommy's just gonna sit there. So when my son started on the bottle, I started being able to get up and go to her, and again, getting down on her level, talking to her, like face to face, eye contact to eye contact, and like talking to her, and not like being quote unquote like a lazy parent or whatever you want to say. But if she does something in another room, like I don't yell at her across the house, like I go to her and talk to her, and that works much better. The eye contact it really works, because what my daughter used to do is if I was like trying to talk to her from far away, she would do one of these. Well, I was talking to her, and then I'm just like, do you know what mommy just said? Nope. So getting on their level really puts them, and it kind of makes them like pay attention to you, because you're right there. And you can say like, to start talking about feelings, but you are there and they know that they have your attention. I think that's very, very, very important. So just how we do like discipline, if a tantrum would get way out of hand, we do use timeouts. it's very important to follow through. There was a period of time where she knew what timeout meant, and so we would just say, well, I'm going to put you in timeout. But then, like, we didn't. So follow through is definitely something that we have learned that is very important with, like, taming the tantrums. If they know that you're going to follow through, they're more likely to listen to you. And just for timeouts, like, what we do is we do a warning. The first time she does a behavior, it is a warning. Such as, like, we had a play date like several months ago already, and she hadn't, like, hit before that, but she just, like, whopped her friend on the head. And I was just like, we do not hit. That is naughty, and you will sit in timeout for it. So that was her warning. And then she did it again, like 5 minutes later. And so I followed through, and I put her in timeout. And that happened on a couple different occasions where she had hit. And now she doesn't hit anymore. She knows that that is naughty. So we do one warning. And then she does sit in timeout for it, and we do 1 year per age of our kids. So when she was 1, she had to sit for 1 minute, and now that she's 2, she sits for 2 minutes, and that works great for us. It's a process. She knows what the process is. So we give a warning, and she sits, and then we talk about it, and then we move on. And then what I try to do is I try to do, like, not necessarily during supper, but, like, at the end of the day, I'm kind of going through, like, oh, today you hit Brayden. Was that nice to hit Brayden, or was that not nice to hit Brayden? That was not nice to hit Brayden. And so it kind of, like, does it in her brain that, oh yeah, that happened today, and I'm not going to do that again. And then we talk about the consequences. So, like, kind of like what happens before, try to eliminate tantrums with your expectations. The during, if there is a tantrum, try to resolve it as quickly as possible, like use timeout if you have to, or redirect, try to resolve that behavior somehow, staying calm. And then, like, natural consequences, like we had a couple tantrums at the pool for, like, getting it back in the water during break that I talked about before. So a natural consequence for not following the rules was that we had to leave, and she did not like that. And so now she knows that if we go to the city pool, that when there's break time, we do not get in the water, we don't touch the water, we stay away from the water, because if we don't, we might have to leave for not following the rules. So anyways, I know this is kind of a long video, and it is kind of rambling. So if there's any questions or comments, please leave them below. But those are my best tantrum tips, especially the stay calm and follow through one. Those work the best, and they've worked for our daughter, and hopefully they will work with our son as well. He is a little bit different than her, so we will see how things go with her. So if this helped you, please leave a comment below. If it didn't help, or if you have any advice for moms, please leave that below too. Thanks. Bye.